In episode 2 of the Recreating Connections podcast, join us as we delve into the world of esports with Rick Suarez, Managing Director of Stay Plugged In Sports. Rick shares insights on current trends in esports and explores how parks and recreation departments are leveraging this growing phenomenon to enhance community engagement. Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Recreating Connections podcast, episode 2. My name is Alex Cadet. I am the outreach consultant with NC State RRS, and my co-host with me.
Hey, I'm Holly Henry. I'm the University Program Associate with Recreation Resources Service.
And we have an esteemed guest with us right now, Rick Suarez, the Managing Director for Stay Plugged In Sports. Rick, it's great to have you on today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, just to get us started, Rick, do you want to briefly give us some background and how you got into esports landscape?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Again, Rick Suarez, Managing Director here at Stay Plugged In. Really, this started out as a passion project more than anything else. My background is in traditional sports, played baseball my whole life, basically have two older boys, followed the same vein, and a daughter who's probably the most competitive in our family, and into a variety of different sports. I've coached as well. Anyway, long story short, my oldest son got into competitive esports, and I didn't understand why he was spending so much time in front of a computer and had been hearing quite a bit about esports at the time. So just did a deeper dive into esports as a whole and realized that there really was a segment needed to help create a pathway through scholarships for high school students to gain entry into college and compete competitively around esports there. So Stay Plugged In was born off of that in 2020, and we've been doing it ever since.
That's awesome. So, for those completely out of the loop, how would you describe esports? Like, what are they?
Yeah, for sure. So and again, I walked the same shoes 5, 6 years ago. Esports is a little bit different than your casual gaming, your typical gaming. Most people see maybe their son or daughter playing a game on TV with their headphones on or whatever, and chatting with someone, whether they know them or not. Esports really is a team-based allocation. In other words, there's a variety of different game titles where it's a 3v3, 4v4, or 5v5, which really helps blend a lot of the soft skills you get from your traditional sports back into esports. So it's a lot more competitive team-based play that we see out there in the esports world in general.
That's really cool. So, what are the types of games that are played? Like team sports and individuals?
Sure. I think most people will think of your team-based games like Madden for football or NBA 2K or FIFA, et cetera, as what most kids play in the competitive arena, but it's the complete opposite. Most kids actually typically shy away from those when they're looking to try to get scholarship dollars to go to college. At the collegiate level, what's mostly recruited are, again, these team-based sports, more like a Rocket League, which is a 3v3. It's basically soccer with cars, or Valorant, or Overwatch, League of Legends. Those are probably the most popular titles. Again, very much team-oriented, where it's 4v4 or 5v5.
So, if you could explain some of the missions and goals for Stay Plugged In Sports for us.
Oh, yeah, easy. That's our entire mission really is to try to help provide an end-to-end solution for students and their passion around gaming. That's kind of why we started the company. Background of my son. How do we take their love of what they typically do day in or day out and turn that into a positive win, whether it's a collegiate scholarship or career opportunity, et cetera?
So, how are colleges and universities throughout the region investing in esports labs and other opportunities? How do you see that coming to form?
Sure. Yeah, I think in a couple of different ways. For a number of colleges throughout the country, they're looking at applications dwindling. So they utilize esports and gaming as a way to attract additional student body to apply and ultimately go to those institutions. And even for larger schools that may be a very well-known name brand, they're also looking at how do we engage our current community of students that is on campus? How do we get them to intermingle together? What do they like to do? How do they spend their time? And again, in today's world, that's through gaming. So we see a lot of institutions devoting millions of dollars literally to spaces that are in tune with what their community, their students really are looking for, which is a gaming lounge, gaming space, a place to just kind of come out, hang, relax, do their homework, but also give them the ability to game if they want to.
So, Rick, as you know, parks and recreation departments are investing in esports as well.
Mhm.
Could you just explain the benefits for esports and community engagement with parks and recreation departments?
Yeah, when it comes specifically to Parks and Rec, typically you think of physical activity and playgrounds and workout equipment, things of that nature, which if you talk to a lot of parents, they don't see that in esports in general. But I think for Parks and Rec, their main objective is what can they do to help their community as a whole. So again, by providing a safe space through gaming, where that's again, that's just a go-to in today's generation. I used to get up and maybe get on the phone and chat with my buddies or go out to the park and do something like that. Where nowadays, on their downtime, most students are typically chatting to their buddies online through a game. So being able to provide a safe environment for those students so that that's where they are after school. Again, there's the ability to find ways to get recruited. There's educational components that could be associated with it as well. So there's a number of different boxes Parks and Recs can check in respect to providing these types of environments for their community.
Not to backtrack, I think I was introduced to Rocket League probably in 2017 by my brother-in-law, and I felt like I felt like an old head pretty much. Like I was out of the loop as far as that goes. Um, but speaking of Rocket League, I know a couple of departments around the state of North Carolina have done Rocket League tournaments. Could you
Mhm.
speak to how esports events can contribute to revenue generation and sustainability for parks facilities?
Yeah, no, for sure. You feel like I know that you should see me in the office every day. Um, so there's a couple different ways. When you're talking about a game like Rocket League or typical, title that a number of people like to play, just hosting one-off tournaments is certainly a way to generate revenue to get, traction of students and people in general coming through the door of that community center. Setting up leagues, which is something that Parks and Recs are very familiar with, whether they have basketball leagues, volleyball leagues, you name it, they typically run some sort of league. Very similarly, esports can do exactly that. And again, also helps keep students off the street, and keep those problems from developing, if you will. Um, so those are two quick and easy ways where you can almost mirror what traditional sports does, where they have a number of weekend tournaments or leagues within the community that certainly can be monetized as well.
And how do you see the future of esports, and what role can parks and recreation directors play in fostering that growth? And also, if you kind of want to speak to any trends in the coming years, parks and recreation directors can look for, feel free to add that as well.
Yeah, sure. I think right now, we've chatted with a few for sure throughout the country. I think most people in general that deal with traditional sports and kind of what the outcomes for those are still have a difficult time grasping how playing a video game can be productive.
Right.
So just being able to dive in and just educating themselves about, okay, how does esports work? What are these leagues? What do the students actually get out of this? Again, the soft skills, the teamwork, camaraderie, different roles that students have to play, whether one becomes a leader, one becomes a little bit more of a, hey, I can understand this and let's strategize this way. All of that really encompasses competitive gaming. So as we look at what Parks and Recs can do for their communities, lots of times most of these games are played on PCs. Now, most people think of the consoles, the Xboxes, the PlayStation 5s, etc. Um, we always recommend that the students play and they can connect their controller, so it's no different, but be playing off of a computer. So now, in essence, what that Parks and Recs department has created is not just an environment that's safe for students or people to come in and game and participate in those leagues, tournaments, etc. But they've also created a mini tech hub. They've got the tech right there in front of them, and we live in a digital world. There are so many students that don't necessarily have access to some of this type of equipment that now they can't. They can go to their local community center and learn a little bit more about AI or cybersecurity or whatever the program may be. But without that type of technology, it can make it a little bit more difficult for a number of people within different communities.
Right. Prior to this role, I was recreation supervisor for the city of Belmont, and I feel like we were just
Mhm.
scratching the surface when it comes to esports. And before I left, we didn't get to implement a program or anything, um, but what advice would you give to departments looking to start an esports program, or if they have one, how could
Mhm.
they expand that program?
Yeah, no, I gotcha. Good question. I think the first step most people think about is let's just buy some consoles or let's just buy some computers and let's put them in a room and let's have the kids have at it. That doesn't work very well typically because that community of students will also have a gaming console at home, or they can play on their phone, et cetera, et cetera. They have a variety of different options beyond that. So really having a program, I think, is the most critical first step to try. How do we set up a league as an example? How do we set up a tournament over the weekends as an example? How do we get local colleges involved? How do we get local high schools and middle schools involved? And I think that's really the strategy around building something of meaning and that's sustainable in any Parks and Rec organization. It's not as simple as the famous line, if we build it, they will come. That's not necessarily the case. It's really about the programming that can be utilized and then explained to the community, right? How do parents buy into bringing their kids to this space to game that sometimes they may not look at in the most positive manner? Well, what's the benefit for the student, right? Is there this educational pathway, or is this their collegiate pathway that can stem from this? Then all of a sudden it starts to make a lot more sense as to the programs that the community center, rec center offers, and by default, they'll start to engage that population a little bit more readily.
And I know the biggest question directors will probably have is what technological infrastructure is needed to effectively host an esports event or esports program?
Another good question. I mean, I think what comes to mind for most people is connectivity, internet wise. Having a high level internet connection is, while not necessarily required, always um, suggested. Look at it another way. If you play any sport, you want some decent equipment, right, to be able to compete in that sport. If you're playing baseball, you want an aluminum bat instead of a wood bat, et cetera. So similarly, you want a good connection in your venue slash facility, which is becoming a lot more available in most places nowadays, fiber internet, et cetera. And then I alluded to the equipment beyond that a little bit earlier in the question about setting up a program, looking at the computers and the technology that could bring to the table to help enhance what those opportunities are within the community as opposed to just consoles.
And as the outreach consultant, where a part of my job is engaging underserved and marginalized communities, how can esports help in ensuring effective inclusivity?
Yeah, again, we look at that all of the time when we look at building anything within any community. How does this provide an impact? And that's why we talk about a mini tech hub, being able to have students within those communities come out to learn a little bit more about, frankly, just using a computer, and being comfortable around it, and then diving into different topics within that framework, like artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, et cetera. There are leagues that can be set up where the kids are competing in a fun environment because that's what they love to do. That's kind of the hook, if you will, to get them through the door. But by default, you can add this experiential learning environment with adding these projects to those leagues. We've seen it before. We've done it before. We've seen other companies do it before, where by the end of that league, not only has the student gained new friends and everything else by the gaming side of it, but they've also learned a specific skill set or about a specific vocation. So to us, that's one way to look at, how do we help underserved or marginalized communities just get a lot more out of just a console.
Gotcha. And for those listening, I got to listen to Rick speak at one of our directors' conferences in Winston-Salem this past year. A lot of good information. They want to get in touch with you, Rick. Where can they contact? Could you briefly plug
Sure.
your information?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Easiest way to get a hold of us is info at staypluggedin.com. Info at staypluggedin.com. And we'll get, depending upon what you're looking for, your question, et cetera, we'll get it to the right department to get answered and go from there. But question for you, you mentioned Rocket League and an old hat. Do you play games now yourself? Any video games of interest?
Yeah, I do. I'm more of a PS4, PS5 guy. Holly and I actually have been playing
Yes.
Hogwarts Legacy.
See how he pulled you right in? He's like, I'm not going
Yes.
out. I'll let
I
y'all by myself here.
I came, yeah, I unmuted myself because I was ready. So you pulled me in at the perfect time. Yeah, I just recently got into gaming. Um, I come from a gaming family, so I'm a little late to the party, but I'm happy to be here at all. So this is a great conversation too.
So tell me about that. I'm not trying to reverse roles here, but you,
Oh
you
no, it's
just
good.
recently got into gaming, which is interesting
Yes.
by default to me, and you come from a gaming family. What does all that mean?
So I am more of the cozy game type. It's funny because Alex and I have been having this whole conversation about Hogwarts Legacy, and you can play it on normal or advanced or easy. And I, I'll keep a long story short. I tried to play it normal as a very beginner novice, and so I switched it back to easy, and we have been smooth sailing ever since. I think that's the best way to describe it, right, Alex? Like,
Exactly. No, I'm a big lover of story games.
yeah,
But also, I grew up playing a lot of sports games. Your NBA Lives, your NBA 2Ks, your Maddens, things like that. And then how I was brought into Rocket League, I was just over at the house one day, and my brother-in-law was like, "Hey, let's just play this real quick." And I'm like, "Race cars and soccer, I don't know." Anyways, we're super competitive, so yeah, we just ended up playing that for for a good little bit. So then I just dug deep into it and saw that Rocket League was booming as far as I think it came out in 2015. By that time it was
yeah.
2017, so it was everywhere. So I tried
Yep.
to take that to my Parks and Recreation department and said, "Hey, we can start a league like this," and that got me into the esports rabbit hole pretty much, and just getting to learn it like that.
Got it. Got it. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, like I said, and you guys both just kind of showed different stories of how you got there. Alex, you've been playing for a little bit, but it's competitive by nature,
Hmm.
like just like any other game, a board game, a card game, a video game.
Exactly.
Um, and then Holly, you walked into it and a little bit later, but it's a great way to spend some time with someone if you know somebody, or even if it's virtual. We live in a very virtual world. Being able to connect with friends that may not be in the same state, but yet you can play this game with them and chat with them while you're doing it and things of that nature. So, as you asked about Parks and Rec and how they can grow it and what their community does and so on, these are perfect examples of if you have the right types of programming to engage the population to come in and do some of these things, then it's a win. Even if you look at some of the older generation, I'm a little bit older, but I love it when my son calls me. He lives in South Carolina and says, "Hey, want to jump on and play a game of Call of Duty?" Like, yeah,
Right.
this is my chance to interact with my son. Families can interact in these community centers where kids are playing with their parents, etc. Heck, there's a world where we've seen teenagers teaching technology to some of the elderly, just coming
Yeah.
in not in video games, but using the tech that's in that tech hub, if you will.
Right.
Just how do we do things a little bit more efficiently? How do we do things a little bit better? So again, a space like this can do and lead to so many things within the community with gaming at its core.
For something that people think is so solo, it does build a lot of community. And exactly what you said about, bridging the gap. If you have a long distance friend or you can meet long distance friends online and play, it's really amazing when it's done.
Yeah, for sure. Just a different world, different way to do things. And I think just having an understanding of um, how to go about it in a positive manner, because I think that's where most of us, when I say us older folks, get a little caught up on hesitancy around gaming in general,
Right.
not really having a full understanding of what the powerful possibilities are. So again, when there is that structure that can be laid out, that groundwork that can be laid out by parks and recs or high schools or colleges with their programs, it just makes it so much more impactful for the students that are going through that journey.
Yeah, so that's just to directors around the state. If you had any hesitancy before about getting into esports and starting programs, here's your sign to start it now. So, Rick, we want to thank you for speaking to it, and we appreciate you.
Yeah, my pleasure, as they say. And again, appreciate both you and Holly having some time to chat with me about gaming. So all good.
This has
Great,
been
thank
awesome.
you.
Thanks, Rick.